Ancient History vs. brings you the story of Irene of Athens, the Byzantine Empire's first Empress Regnant. In the year 750 or 756, a baby girl was born into a noble family in Athens. She would grow up to be one of the most divisive figures in Byzantine history. A woman who held court like a man, abandoned her family, betrayed her husband, blinded her own son, and declared herself the first female emperor in Roman history. Her story is one of tragedy and ambition. Welcome to my channel. Irene Sorontopochina grew up in relative obscurity until she married the future Emperor Leo III at the age of 24. Leo had seized the throne just 2 years earlier in 741, after leading a successful revolt against the previous empress, his aunt, who had usurped the throne. He may have needed a bride with political connections to secure his position. Together, Leo and Irene had 2 sons, the future emperors Constantine and Leo. But both parents would die when the boys were still young. When Leo passed away in 775, Constantine was only 9 years old. So Irene took over as regent while ensuring her youngest son's place as Caesar, Junior, Emperor, and her From the very beginning, she maneuvered ruthlessly to eliminate any rivals for the throne. And there were plenty. Leo had been the 3rd husband of the former empress, making him the stepfather of 3 other princes from her previous marriages. She neutralized them all by forcing them into the clergy, cutting them off from any hope of seizing the throne through inheritance or marriage. Even her brothers, Leo's brothers, sought to usurp the throne for themselves, but they too were forced into monasticism. The only person who remained was her eldest stepson, Artabasdos, who commanded the army in the east. In 776, he rebelled, but Irene crushed his revolt, blinded him, and shaved his head as punishment. Then she sent him off to a monastery where he died. Throughout her career, Irene was criticized for being too fond of luxury and pleasure, for dressing in fine clothes and makeup, and for living openly with her favorite male concubine, the eunuch Staurakios. A contemporary source described her as having been brought up among men and disdainful of women. Yet she made sure to marry off her daughter-in-law, the Empress, the wife of Constantine. When her stepson, Nikephoros, rebelled in 778, Irene led an army to meet him in battle. While her son stayed safely behind in Constantinople, she defeated Nikephoros and blinded him, then threw him in prison where he would eventually die. All this was done in the name of protecting her young son. But she also used the excuse of protecting the Orthodox faith. After successfully suppressing these revolts, Irene turned her attention to what may have been her greatest legacy, the restoration of icons in the Eastern Orthodox Church. In 787, she convened the Second Council of Nicaea, which reversed the iconoclastic policies of her husband and his predecessors, which had banned the veneration of icons as heretical and superstitious. The council permitted the use of icons once more and established the foundations of Byzantine iconography. The Orthodox Church venerates her as a saint to this day for championing the cause of icons. But her most enduring legacy is something much more controversial: her decision to seize power for herself. In 790, when Constantine came of age, he assumed sole control of the empire. Perhaps because Irene believed he was incapable of ruling, or perhaps because she wanted to keep him far from the intrigues of court. Either way, she spent the next 2 years running the government from behind the scenes, while her son took care of the ceremonial duties. But in 792, Constantine awarded his mother the title of Copimpa, associate ruler. Finally, she shared power with her son, and Staurakios acted as intermediary between them. This arrangement lasted for 5 years. Throughout their regency, Relations between Irene and her son deteriorated, and rumors spread that she planned to kill him and take the throne for herself. Why did she want to rule alone? We don't know for sure, but perhaps she was never satisfied to be merely an empress consort, even if her son was technically the senior emperor. Perhaps she believed herself more qualified to rule. Or perhaps she didn't trust her son, knowing from experience how quickly relatives will turn on each other for the sake of power. Whatever the reason, in 797, she launched a coup with the help of the army and forced Constantine to abdicate. She had him blinded, probably killing him, and proclaimed herself Basileus, the title usually reserved for the male emperor, not empress. No woman had ever held such a title in Roman history. Although some emperors before her had ruled alongside a queen consort, they had always styled themselves as the sole ruler. But Irene now officially styled herself as the one emperor. As if to prove her point, she had gold coins minted depicting only her face. On one side, the legend read, "The most pious, most divine, most glorious lady, Irene, by the grace of God, Emperor of the Romans." On the reverse, the usual imperial legend was replaced with the words, "Struck in the year 17 of the reign of the one emperor, Irene." The papacy refused to accept a female emperor, so, in 800, the Archbishop of Milan crowned the Frankish king Charlemagne as Emperor of the Romans, in the first major step towards the division of the empire into the western and eastern halves. And that wasn't the only snub she suffered. Later that same year, the Empress of China refused to acknowledge her legitimacy and gave her the insulting title of female Emperor of Byzantium. Some sources claim Irene even considered marrying the Frankish king to end the split between Rome and Constantinople. She supposedly sent him a list of conditions for such a marriage, including that he submit to the jurisdiction of the Patriarch of Constantinople and pay an annual tribute of gold. Charlemagne refused, believing it would be a sin to marry a woman who had been married to 3 men, had borne children with 2 of them, and had murdered her own son. In 802, Irene's finance minister Pharisai, who she had previously put to flight, rebelled again and forced her to flee to the island of Lesbos, where she lived out her remaining years in exile. There she died 3 years later, in 803. One source claimed that when Nikephoros learned of her death, he wept, realizing that he had caused the empire to lose a wise ruler. Irene is remembered by Orthodox Christians as a saint, one of the 7 women depicted on the iconostasis in Old Believers' churches, along with the Virgin Mary, Saint Anna, Saint Sophia, and 4 other early Christian women. She is celebrated on July 25th. However, the rest of history remembers her for very different reasons. Procopius of Gaza compared her favorably to the legendary Queen Zenobia, another femme fatale from the past, while others labeled her the female Maecenas, referring to the infamous power broker of the Giulio-Claudian dynasty. Above all else, Irene is remembered as a pioneer, the first woman in Roman history to rule in her own now.